Hey y'all, welcome back to Adventuring with Amanda. Thank you so much for being here. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Y'all, in today's video, we are talking about the differences between boondocking in the Arizona desert versus the Arizona forest. Like this video, subscribe to my channel. Let's get into it. A major difference between boondocking in the desert and the forest is the fact that there is so much more shade in the forest, of course. So you have to shift with the sun and the shade accordingly, whether that be your chair, your water, just where you want to sit, your solar. In the desert, you have sun all around you all the time because there really aren't trees to give you shade. The forest, much different in that regard. It's much easier to get consistent solar in the desert, again, because of the shade. This morning, this solar panel was completely in the sun. So you will have to move your panels with the sun in the Arizona forest, which is why I highly recommend having portable solar panels. In the forest, it's much more difficult to find a flat area for your rig to be level, unlike the desert where most of the terrain is pretty flat. So if you are camping up north in the forest, be sure to bring some levelers or some 2x4s because it's almost guaranteed that you will need them. And trust me, you want to be level to be comfortable. Although the temperatures are cooler in northern Arizona, it is higher elevation, so the sun feels more powerful and the UV index is higher. So you might feel that the sun is beating hard on you. Be sure to wear your sunscreen because you will get sunburnt. The ground in the desert can be rocky and hard, very difficult to put a tent stake into. But the ground in northern Arizona is much softer, easier to put up a shower tent or whatever you need. Just so much easier than that rocky desert. The desert is much more accessible for camping when it comes to hosting a lot of people or big rigs. At the area we are at right now, a big rig could not easily get into the spot, and it was actually very difficult to find an opening. So there is less accessibility in the forest, and land for boondocking is much more abundant in the desert. Arizona is a very dry state. That's actually one of the things I love about it because I hate the humidity. But with the dry climate comes dust because we are a desert state as well. But up in northern Arizona, in the pines, it's not nearly as dusty. The dust is mitigated by the difference in environment, plus there's a lot more precipitation up here year-round than in the desert. We do have dirt roads, but again, it's not nearly as bad as it is in the desert. Much easier to keep things clean. Do you have satellite TV or Starlink? It'll be much more difficult to get a signal in the pine trees because of the cover. Easier to get a straight shot of signal in the desert, but when you're camping in the forest, it's much more difficult. There's a lot of tree coverage up here. So using Starlink or a satellite dish can be more of a challenge. The wildlife and bugs are a big difference between the desert and the forest. In the forest, we see elk, deer, and sometimes free-range cattle. There are coyotes up here as well. And in the desert, it's mostly coyotes and foxes. It's not mosquito season yet up here, which is really nice. There are a lot more flies in the desert. And during the winter, the scorpions and the spiders and the snakes kind of go away. There's not a lot of that up here in the north, so you do see quite a few cow patties and elk droppings on the ground. But luckily, like I said, the snakes and scorpions, not as much of a risk in the forest. Oh, and there's squirrels too. Wynston likes to chase the squirrels in the forest. Forest boondocking tends to have a lot more activity in the surrounding areas in terms of hiking trails, day use parks, and even water. Lakes, rivers, you can kayak, you can fish. If you're looking for an abundance of outdoor activities, I think that the forest is probably a better place to be. Now, the desert does have some beautiful national parks and hiking trails, but if you're looking for water specifically, and generally cooler temperatures, the forest is a good place to be. And maybe you're a cold weather person and you like to camp in the snow and go snowshoeing and, those very freezing activities. Well, if you do, the forest is definitely a better place for boondocking. In the north, it's easier to find wood for a fire. Be sure you don't chop down anything that could be illegal to do, but you have to keep in mind that there are often fire bans or restrictions during forest fire season. So be sure to check government websites for any of those that might be occurring. While I am personally a fan of boondocking myself, and it's very rare that I stay at a campground, one thing that I have noticed about northern Arizona is that there are a lot more campground options. So if you get sick of boondocking, maybe you need to hook up for a few days, you want to meet some people, take advantage of amenities, it's much easier to find a campground nearby. Arizona campgrounds in the north are typically open from about March to September or October, and then it's the opposite in the desert. Campgrounds typically open in October and then close around anywhere from April to June. So I've noticed that campgrounds are more abundant in the north if you do need a break from boondocking, but they definitely do exist in the desert. It just may be a little more difficult to find one when you are camping out on BLM land in the boonies. It's so weird because it's a very windy day today in the forest. I think 18-mile-per-hour winds, but it literally doesn't feel like that because the trees are breaking it up. In the desert, there's nothing to stop the wind. The trees really create that natural barrier for the wind. So it's about 60 degrees today with a breeze. Oh, and it's glorious. So I hope you enjoyed this video about the differences between boondocking in the desert versus the forest. Let me know in the comments if you can think of anything that I didn't mention in this video. I also want to know if you prefer boondocking in the forest or the desert. Now, the forest is my preferred location, but I do this 6 months out of the year, and then I go to the desert 6 months out of the year. And of course, the desert in the winter brings in beautiful weather, and I enjoy the quartzsite community. So both situations really have their benefits. Thank you again for taking the time to watch. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.